Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today I've got the Lovers as the obstacle and the Four of Swords as the opportunity. So let's jump in here. Got the Lovers, the number 6 card. I like to look at this card as being paired, connected with the Tower, which is kind of bad news often. A lot of people see it as bad news. Looking at the Marseille deck, the meanings I think are radically different, both for the Lovers and the Tower, which, like I said, in my opinion, kind of serves as the context in which to read this card. How big of a difference is this? I mean, whoops. Uh, so we still got the Angel, right, and the Sun. Those are consistent, but here got this guy, and then the women, and this card is called the Lover. It's not even called the Lovers. It's a pretty radical difference. Now, I will be focusing more on this kind of Rider Waite Smith interpretation, or at least symbolism, because for the sake of this obstacle, I think it suits it a lot better. Um, I in the short video I said, I referenced a Seinfeld episode where Jerry's got a girlfriend and they're ridiculously adorable and cute with each other, and they keep calling each other schmoopy boopy. Um, yeah, they as a couple get into a kind of showdown with George and his girlfriend. They're trying to out cuteify each other, and anyway, I think the episode does a pretty good job at pointing out the kind of animosity, hostility, disgust, maybe jealousy that often public displays of affection bring out in people around them, and and I think that this also applies to public displays of affection for for things other than your lover. It could be just ceaseless praise of an individual, a political figure. There's some movie that is just the best movie of all time. You're just clinging on to something. There's something you won't shut up about. You become Jim, the crypto guy, always talking about cryptocurrency. The being enamored with a musician or whatever. Um, that 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 creates, or certainly can, contribute to the creation of a whole bunch of hostile or dejected relationships from others that interact with that. For one, when it's just you and an individual you're in an intimate relationship with, a lot of people that don't have that and want it, they could feel jealous. It could be something that makes them feel depressed. There's a lot of people that look away from or trying to avoid the the parts of life that remind them that they're alone in the world, right? Um, those kinds of people will react especially powerfully to not just seeing a couple in public, but like any displays of affection or devotion between those two. So it's like they see a guy and a girl walking down the street together, and that's it. Okay, that might bum them out or upset them or whatever, but if they're holding hands, okay, it's something else. If they're embracing, if they're kissing, if they're doing the schmoopy moopy, baby talk to each other, it's like it just gets progressively worse and worse. Now, there's a lot of these people that you know they're not your concern. You don't need to worry about it. Do whatever you want. But there are people probably that you interact with on a regular basis that are within, it's your circle of friends, maybe your professional circle, family, whatever. And as far as those people are concerned, I think it's worth considering what kind of displays of affection, again, to an individual or to anything, an idea, an object. You won't stop talking about your car, whatever. Um, I think that it could be valuable to stop and consider what kind of displays, of enamorship and love uh, you partake in on a regular basis. And then there's something about this card that's just, it's so grand. I mean, like, there's an angel overlooking these two individuals, and there's these biblical references, and um, I think that this card, like all of the major arcana, I think often symbolize how you are seen by a particular environment. And I think that there's a way of looking at this card and interpreting it as beautiful and symbolic and majestic and divine and inspiring. But you know, to someone who to someone who doesn't respond to symbols of sunshine and angels and biblical references and stuff, this kind of stuff just this kind of imagery, consider what it comes across like to them. It's just it seems like bullshit dressed up propaganda. It's or like an advertisement. It's like those people can easily see this as like, okay, someone's really trying to sell this idea. Look at all this imagery they're evoking that is attempting to support this kind of union of people. It's they kind of just see that as like it's just crap, right? Um, they don't buy it. They react adversely to it. So yeah, I think it can be worthwhile to consider who sees you and your displays of affection for a thing or a person as this kind of fake propagandized marketed disingenuous thing. And it's like, I'm not saying that your displays are disingenuous. I have no doubt that they do come from a genuine place, but I think this is like the yellow card, like in soccer, where it's like, okay, like we're having dinner together, you guys are making out a little too much, like warning. Like you're in a social setting, like just pull it together. You're a little too preoccupied with each other, not acknowledging the larger thing. So I think that could be an interpretation of this as an obstacle. And then for the opportunity, um, what I mentioned earlier was that it can be easy to look at the world. And I wasn't too specific, but just to clarify, I'm thinking about the world in terms of how how the world of people is. So it's the kind of situations where you think what you're experiencing is a depiction of the way the world is insofar as it pertains to people in large numbers. So like a socio-political snapshot. This is where we are as a country, as a civilization, as a people. What's the human race like? This is what the human race is like. Do you generally see humanity as being defined by what are humans? They're destroyers of the planet, you know? What are humans? They're crazy inventors. They're genius inventors who are going out into space. That's how much we've achieved. What is the human race? They're warmongering murderers, you know? They just want guns and they want to kill each other. What are human beings? They're incredible philanthropists with endless generosity, helping out, countless millions of people rise out of poverty. Like all of these, to some extent are true. And I think that it can be pretty easy to look out into the world right now. And I mean, none of us are really capable of like how would you genuinely look at the world? You know, install a billion cameras and then flip through them sequentially or no, it's like we rely on news. We largely even rely on fantasy and fiction to help us build our perception of what the world is like right now, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. um, but yeah, we essentially look to news of the world being delivered to us, and there's very little we can do to ensure the validity and accuracy of those descriptions of what the world is like. Specifically, what are humans like when you describe them in large numbers, right? And specifically, this applies to like how things are. So it's like the stable perception of the world of people. Not so much, the Five of Swords would be like, what is happening? What is the activity? What are the changes happening in the human species? What are the revolutions? Where is the action? This is like the static. Where is it at? And I think that, yeah, looking at the world, asking what are people like, can often be met with answers from very biased sources, often that are just they're very plainly businesses. They're companies that are in the business of delivering us this sort of information in a way that will keep us coming back for more. They're not exactly in the business necessarily of providing the most accurate information. It's just like how much information they could turn over as quickly as possible, how easily they can get their hands on information that will be the most shocking or surprising, or that will support our pre-existing views. So there's a lot of propaganda and bullshit out there. And then also there's a lot of facts, and often it can be really difficult to tell the difference between the two, right? Like there's the fake news, like just that little soundbite, that idea of fake news existing, that's been popularized again and again throughout time, but it's been repopularized pretty recently. There's a lot of individuals that simultaneously claim the existence of fake news, but then somehow have this unshakable confidence that their news sources are the ones that they could count on. Anyway, so I think there's plenty of opportunities for confusion, dejection, depression, anxiety, and I think that the opportunity here is to expand that outlook on, what are people, what are we, what is the species of human beings. If you expand that outside of that kind of 24-hour news cycle of trying to get the most up-to-date answer to that question, if you start looking at what is humanity, who we are, if you start trying to answer that question by looking at a longer scope of time, of taking your samples essentially from history, I think you start getting a much more realistic view. There's plenty of plenty of well documented times in the past when people dealt with scenarios that were very similar to what you and I might be experiencing today, and there's a lot of well documented times that describe how at that point in time people were really misinformed, and then it turned out that this was actually the case. And if you read enough of those, I think you start to get a pretty objective picture of the the kind of cycles of misinformation that just happen throughout history. I think that's a better outlook, even if it could potentially be a sort of pessimistic sounding one. I think that's still a better, more accurate outlook than the one you get from just paying attention to what's happening now. Also, just looking at the accomplishments of human beings, this is kind of like something that I really enjoy doing. There's always going to be people. There's always going to be people telling you that things are terrible. Often they will say that like things are actually worse than ever. Things have never been this bad. And I think in a lot of ways, all you have to do is just read about the world of the past, read about the people of the past. The advancements that have happened, like even just over the course of the last few decades, are ridiculous. And it's pretty easy to, I think it's pretty easy to be distracted by the short term and immediate bad things. Uh, be distracted by those, uh, uh, to not be able to pay attention to the long term trends that essentially are, slowly but surely things are just getting better and better and better. So I think there's a good reason for why it's so easy for us to become distracted, because great things generally take a long time to be created, and and the destruction can happen very rapidly. So I think to a large degree we're tuned to, you know, be more sensitive and be more interested in paying attention to where things are going bad. And you know, I'm not saying ignore that. I'm not saying ignore the tornado warning, let's say, because you're like, tornadoes only happen sporadically. I'm looking at the big picture, you know. Human beings have been thriving in spite of the existence of tornadoes. It's like if there's a tornado warning in your area, you know, that's a different thing. But um, yeah, I think having at least taking up the opportunity to learn a little bit more about where human beings have been, even relatively recently in history, and how far we've come in terms of what human beings have been able to achieve, you know, on a truly global scale. Um, yeah, just the opportunity to like familiarize oneself a little bit more with that, and then at least be able to maybe have a little bit more of a balanced outlook in the face of all of the you know, let's say daily reports of bad things happening. Here's, you know, and it's always like, here's one person who did some terrible thing, and like, how about you update your update your expectations of all human beings based on the actions of this one person? You know, it's like this. There's often, I think, that like a subconscious impulse to, it's like, oh, I read about some crazy person that did some truly horrendous shit. Time to time to downgrade my outlook for, you know, how good humanity is in general. But yeah, I think looking over the past, learning about all the things that are all the projects, all the like multi-generational projects that are coming to fruition now, all of the countless people that have been, you know, there's the expression where you're like, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like all of these amazing technological advancements that we have, that were like generations upon generations of other technological advancements of people just pouring their genius into all these different fields. Like, yeah, I really think it's I think in so many ways it's a great time to be alive, and and I think it's truly a shame to not be able to see, you know, any of those, any of the positive aspects of the world that we exist in now. You know, again, not to be completely naive and ignorant of the bad things that objectively do exist. But yeah, it's I think it's truly a shame to live in a way where you can only see the bad in the world, and you've got nothing to sort of counterbalance it with. So yeah, that's my suggestion for the opportunity there. I'm going to wrap things up here. Thanks for watching. Drop me a like if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to comment hashtag free reading if you would like to be entered for a weekly draw for a free one-on-one personal reading. I'll be back tomorrow. Take care.